Morning, everyone. Welcome to the August 8th, 2024 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda today, there are speaker request forms to the left of the dais. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the secretary. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. The public hearing on item number 1, the approval of the July 25th, 2024 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting minutes, is hereby opened. All right, Karen made the motion to approve those minutes, and Haven seconded the motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Good morning. So this item is a variance request to allow asphalt milling drive aisles in vehicle display areas for the subject property north of East Mill Drive and west of Dakota Craft Drive. So this property is currently undeveloped and zoned light industrial district. Future land use is light industrial. The property is accessed by Dakota Craft Drive, which is classified as a collector street on the city's major street plan. So this is a site plan that was submitted. The applicant is General Equipment and Supplies, and they're a heavy construction equipment dealer. As you can see, they're planning to build a shop and an office building centrally on the property. And then we'll have heavy construction equipment display at the front and rear of the property. So those display areas will be surfaced with asphalt millings instead of concrete or asphalt, which is required by the zoning code for any parking or circulation. It has to be hard surfaced. And the reason that they're surfacing with asphalt milling is because that heavy construction equipment will damage hard surfaces like concrete or asphalt. So that's the reason that those display areas are being paved with asphalt millings. So this is the phasing plan that was submitted. Phase 1 is shown in blue. It's going to include 2 new approaches off Dakota Craft Drive, the front display area, and then phase 2 is shown in pink, and it's going to include the office building, construction of the office building, construction of the parking lot, and the rear display area. So staff is recommending that a dust palliative be applied to the asphalt milling area, and that's to mitigate adverse impacts on adjacent property owners and to reduce the tracking of dirt and dust into the right-of-way. So this is just a picture of the property. This is looking east from Dakota Craft Drive into the property. You can see they got a sign up and then some equipment in the back. This is just another picture of the property. Looking east from Dakota Craft Drive again. This is looking north on that same street and looking south on that same street. So staff is recommending that this variance be approved because the land use is permitted in the light industrial district. Hard surfacing in that area will lead to damage with the heavy construction equipment, so that's a special circumstance. And then a dust palliative will be applied annually to that circulation area, which will mitigate adverse impacts. So with that, I'll stand by for any questions, and the applicant's consultant is in the audience as well.
Thank you. Vicki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to point out, this property is light industrial, and the future land use plan shows that as development occurs in this area, that all of the adjacent properties will promote industrial uses. We went back and reviewed what Zoning Board of Adjustment has done in similar requests. And what we found is if it's in an industrial area, you have supported the alternative surfacing with the dust palliative and other steps, as Tanner noted. But in commercial areas where someone wants to do display or other storage, you've held pretty firm to the concrete and pavement requirement, just because of the potential adjacent land uses that might want to bring that up a grade in design and aesthetic appeal to the public. And so just bringing that to your attention, we would not be supporting this if this were in a commercial area instead of an industrial area.
Thank you. Haven?
I recall it was a few months ago, we approved a similar application, I believe on the Transource property, which is just to the east of this. And if I recall right, this application or the request would be very similar to what was approved in that case.
Vicki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellent memory. That's exactly what we did. And that was one of the first files we pulled, just to make sure we are being consistent in the recommendation that we bring to you to ensure that it's fair to all of the property owners in this area.
All right, other comments on this item or questions for staff? Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to make a motion to approve this request due to special circumstances. And I don't know if you need anything else, but that'll do. Okay.
All right, Karen made the motion to approve the item. Mike Quasney seconded that motion. Were you hoping to have the requirement for the dust palliative mentioned in the motion?
Great catch, Mr.
Vicki?
Chair. Perhaps the motion maker could approve with that reasoning and with the stipulations noted in the project report.
Okay, does that work for you, Mike? Yep. Okay, motion maker and second both agreed to that. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That's our last item on Zoning Board of Adjustment. I'd look for a motion to adjourn Zoning Board of Adjustment so we can move to Planning Commission.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, Vince made the motion. Brooke seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We will now commence the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for August 8th, 2024. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda, just grab a speaker request form from the staff on the left side of the room and fill it out and hand it to a staff member, and we'll make sure you get to speak on that item. And if you still haven't silenced your cell phones, please do so now. Items 1 through 4 have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group today. Action will be taken on all consent items by a single vote in accordance with staff's recommendation. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following item. Item 4, 24 UR 012. The Rapid City Planning Commission's action on this item is final unless any party appeals that action to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 4 that staff would like removed from the consent calendar for separate consideration?
Number 4, please.
Okay. Any items 1 through 4 that any planning commissioner, I guess 1 through 3, that any planning commissioner would like removed from consent for separate consideration? Kind of waiting to see what Kip brings, but any items 1 through 3 that any audience member would like removed? Okay. So any audience member 1 through 3 want to remove for separate consideration? The chair would then entertain a motion to approve items 1 through 3 in accordance with staff's recommendation.
Motion to approve items 1 through 3 in accordance with staff's recommendations
All right.
and stipulations.
Vince made the motion to approve those items, and Mike Gallagher seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion to approve? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4.
Good morning, Chair, Commission. Cassie Hayes from Community Development. Item number 4 was before you at the last Planning Commission meeting on July 25th. This is a conditional use permit request to allow an oversized garage. Just to refresh your memory briefly, he is proposing to construct a 24-foot by 30-foot detached garage in the back area of his property, the currently undeveloped area. So in response to the discussion that we had at the July 25th Planning Commission meeting, there was some concern with the garage having a double stall door and also the orientation of the garage. There was some discussion regarding potential future access either legally or illegally from East Minnesota Street. So I did have a discussion with the applicant, and in response to that, he has stated that the proposed double stall door, he does want that to remain, but it is to be used for just the purposes of moving woodworking lumber in and out of the garage to make it a little bit easier. And he has switched the orientation of that garage door. It is now on the south side of the garage. Let me show you a revised elevation plan. So it does sit on the south side of that garage now. That front elevation that you're looking at is what would face his house. The right elevation that you're looking at right now is what would face the south property line. So that was kind of some of the discussion that had been had at the last Planning Commission meeting. And he has committed to that. He is okay with that. So ultimately, staff is still recommending approval of this conditional use permit request with the stipulations noted in the staff report that have also been amended to indicate that that garage door will face that southern property line. He is in the audience today if you do have any questions as well.
Wonderful. I do have a speaker request from Mr. Rogers. I'd invite him up if he has anything to say.
I really don't have nothing to say. I mean, other than if you have any questions or whatever, but I'm willing to do what you guys have asked me to do as far as the landscaping and all that stuff.
You're okay. If you want to make a longer comment, I'd ask you to do it at the microphone, but
I'm good. Thank you.
okay, sounds good. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the owner in changing the orientation. That works for me. I just have one question. How do you get the lumber up to the garage? I mean, you're not going to carry it by hand, so is it a small tractor or something like that that's going to do that? And I don't know how it gets there from the street up to the garage.
I will defer to the applicant.
We might have to ask you to come up, Mr. Rogers. Thank you. And once you're up at the microphone, just identify yourself for our minutes.
Paul Rogers, homeowner. Just a small trailer, and I've got a side-by-side that I would use to bring it down the sidewalk and bring it in there is all. If that's, I mean, at this time, I don't plan on doing a whole lot of big stuff, but in the future, if that's the case. And I do plan on the side of the garage there, eventually, I've got access to my backyard anyway. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move my fence to butt up against my garage, so I would probably gain most of my access that way, through my property, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Can you go back to the pit?
Just out of curiosity, are you talking about going
Go back
from,
to the
yeah.
layout of the, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the current garage that's attached to your house, that side, that's where you're going to drive?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
I've got a gate through here, and then I'm gonna take this fence eventually, and I'm gonna move it back to not encompass the garage, but to be butt up against the garage, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and that's probably the majority of the access that I'll go through. Eventually, I would like maybe to do a concrete through here on my property, through my backyard to gain access to it.
Okay.
But that's down the road,
Okay.
money-wise.
Thank you. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item? A motion then?
I'll make a
Oh,
motion to approve.
Haven, sorry.
I just, wanted to pose a question. If that fence is moved as proposed by the applicant at some time in the future, I know we run into this issue of a side yard and a front yard. The height of that fence, maybe you could clarify that, maybe the staff or Vicki, on what the fence limitations are along that north side of the lot and along East Minnesota.
Vicki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a corner lot, so while any fencing in the front yard, which would be the side that currently faces Duckhorn Street, has to be set back 20 feet before it can exceed 4 feet. But on the corner lot, that second lot line that abuts the street, that fence can be 6 foot as long as it's set back a minimum of 10 feet. So based on this layout, he's trying to meet that requirement now, and if he stays in line with the existing fencing, he should be fine.
All right, Vince?
Oh, okay. I'll make a motion to approve in accordance with the staff stipulations.
I figured I better give you the chance
thank
since
you.
I cut you off before. Is there a second to Vince's motion? All right, Mike Gallagher seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion to approve? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5.
All right, item number 5 before you is a conditional use permit request to allow an RV rental company. This is on property located at 1802 Elm Avenue, just north of the corner of Elm Avenue and East St. Patrick Street. Current zoning of the property is neighborhood commercial. Future land use is mixed use commercial. And again, this shows the location, like I said, just north of East St. Patrick Street, which is a principal arterial street on the city's major street plan. What they are proposing to do is operate an RV rental company called Fireside RV Rental. This will provide rental management services for RV and camper units. The applicant has indicated that it would be a maximum of 20 RV and or camper units of various sizes and types that would be rented through the company, kept within the existing, most of them within the existing fenced area of the parking lot, and then they are transported off-site. Most of them by the company themselves, from my understanding. They would transport the RV and camper units. Some of them would be transported by the renter, but they are transported off-site. Average rental duration is about 5 to 7 days with a 2-day turnaround time for cleaning. And they are proposing to have services to wash and detail the interior and exterior of rental units as well. You can kind of see where that cleaning station would be here on the north side of that existing building. And that existing building would be used as a storefront and an office for the rental company, and then also for storage of some RV-related equipment that they offer in conjunction with the camper unit rentals, like camping chairs, kayaks, grills, things along those lines. One thing that I do want to point out with this request is that there is adequate parking area on this property to provide the necessary parking spaces. They would need at least 6 parking spaces. However, currently there are no marked parking spaces present on this parking lot, as you can see in this picture, and there is no marked parking proposed on the site plan. Per the code, all parking facilities do need to be marked with striping paint, and that eastern portion of the parking lot that is currently gravel surface, since they are proposing to use that as a parking area for the camper units, that parking area does need to be paved, or they will need to obtain a variance to allow that gravel surface to remain in lieu of pavement. Those stipulations are included as conditions of this conditional use permit if it were to get approved. They are proposing to keep the existing fencing and security cameras and lighting that are currently on this building. The one thing that they have mentioned is that on the south side of that existing building, there currently is a fence, as you can see indicated in this blue circle right here. The most that they would do is potentially move that a little bit further to the west if need arises for them to expand that secured area for those those RV and camper units. They are also proposing to keep the landscaping as it currently is, with the addition of some planter boxes, some flower pots, things like that around the building, to kind of give it a little more homey feeling. And then they are also proposing to change the signage. There is currently a two-sided sign structure on the south border of this property. They are proposing to change that to have the new Fireside Rental logo on it, as you can see indicated right here. They are also proposing to add that lettering to doors and windows of the building as well. So here you can see the property looking from East St. Patrick Street. This is that existing two-sided sign structure that already exists that they would be replacing the face of. Here's looking at it directly from Elm Avenue. Here's looking at that back graveled parking area and the existing fencing there. This is looking south down Elm Avenue. That's the intersection of East St. Patrick Street right there. And then this is looking at the northern side of that property. There is a small little office building right there. And then also this is another access to that graveled parking area back there. And this also would be where they are proposing to do the cleaning services as well. So ultimately, staff is recommending approval of this conditional use permit with the stipulations noted in the staff report. I will stand for any questions, and I do believe, yep, Fireside and also representatives from the leasing company are here as well if you have any questions.
Thank you. Mike Kwasny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That sign that they're proposing is not a lit sign. It's just like a wooden sign that's shown. Okay.
Vicki?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I turned your mic off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a site that, because of its location, it's kind of tucked back, and then it's got some residential to the north and farther to the northeast. So for us to see someone come in that wants to bring a viable business to this property with a use that doesn't necessarily require drive-by traffic, but someone who's thinking ahead, they're looking for this use, it really seems to be a good match, especially with the residential in the area. It won't have a lot of traffic. So it was pretty easy for staff to get behind this one, noting that certainly we don't want to see this property remain vacant for a long period of time.
Thank you. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a question about you said RVs of various sizes. Do we know the maximum size is authorized or permitted?
I might have to defer to the applicant.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Vicki?
Based on your approval, you would be approving for the area for storage, however many they could fit in there. I don't know that we would limit that a maximum, or it would just be the area. They couldn't exceed that area, preserving the vehicular parking that's needed for employees and customers that are going to drive up to the site.
Okay.
If you could identify yourself.
My name is Michael Phillips. I am a branch manager, and my wife, Dana, we own the franchise, Fireside RV Rental, and we are the applicants for the property. Basically, our storage area will be based on the amount of units we get. We're, like I said, 20 maximum, and based on sizes, right now, the maximum we're looking at is a 43-foot that we're negotiating with the owner now to take in as to be property management and rental for them. That's the largest one we know right now, and we look in the future to have anything from 17 to the 43-footer, and that'll be relevant to how many units we are able to put on the property.
We also have, I'm Dana. We also have alternate parking for larger units that we've contracted with some other local, like Dave's Auto Repair and others, that they have leased storage space to us in the back of their property. So if we have overflow needs, we have.
How long normally would you keep something in storage? If I wanted to rent a space from you, how long would you normally keep that?
That's based on usage because the way our business model is basically we keep management and we keep them in storage until they get rented out. And we just be like a continuous rotation. So other than winter months, we pretty much foresee units sitting there from, could be 2 days, it could be a couple months. It just depends on when someone chooses that one to be rented.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Haven?
Thank you. Just so I'm clear, the application here is requesting a conditional use permit to allow the RV company. Maybe you could explain why is the conditional use permit required for this purpose on this property?
Mr. Chair, Cassie, if you could put up the zoning map.
Mm-hmm.
So this is unique in that this is zoned neighborhood commercial, and neighborhood commercial has some pretty harsh restrictions on what is permitted versus conditional. And at first when we saw the zoning, we were hesitant to think that the use would be appropriate. Neighborhood commercials should be those uses that serve the immediate neighborhood. But it does have listed as a conditional use that RV rental and sales are a conditional use. If this were directly to the east on a general commercial, that's the one shown in red, it would be permitted. The neighborhood commercial is the buffer between the commercial and the residential to the west.
Vince? Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to approve in accordance with the staff stipulations.
All right. Vince made a motion to approve in accordance with the stipulations listed, and Karen seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion to approve? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6.
Good morning. I am Mike Dugan from the Finance Department. This morning I'd like to bring before you amendment number 2 to the project plan for the East Anamosa TID number 84. This slide shows the yellow is Rapid City limits, and to the right upper corner, or my upper right corner, would be the TID boundaries. This is where this district is located. Here's a close-up of the district boundaries, and to the lower corner is the original purpose of this district, and the original purpose was to provide public infrastructure for future private investment within these boundaries. This is amendment number 1. This was done and approved in October of 2023. And what amendment number 1 was to reallocate costs within items that were allowed in the project plan, and to increase the project cost by 35%. Sorry. To increase the project cost by 35%, and then introduce the city as developer number 2 to complete Booster Station. The purpose of this amendment was to allow costs that were completed outside of the scope in the project plan. If I can get this to... So, North Valley Drive to the upper middle part is highlighted on this map. What was allowed in the project plan was up to 300 feet from center line, was it to be the eligible expense that could be reimbursed by the TID. During the certification process, it was noticed that there was invoices that were outside of the 300 feet from center line. And so this amendment would allow those costs that were outside of what was allowed in the project plan to be TID eligible. This is the original verbiage from the project plan that allowed costs up to 300 feet from center line to be eligible on North Valley Drive. What this amendment will accomplish is to strike out up to 300 feet from the center line on North Valley Drive, and it will allow all grading that was completed on North Valley Drive to be TID eligible. So the costs associated with that, the project plan allowed up to $1,047,900 for grading costs along North Valley Drive. The total grading costs up to 300 feet from center line, that was the allowable cost, was that $671,000 number. The additional grading that was outside of the 300 feet from center line was a $344,000 number. So the total grading cost for the grading on North Valley Drive was the $1,015,434, which is still under what was originally allowed in the project plan of the $1,047,000. And this is the estimated payoff. This shows, based on the TID balances and the interest, that this will pay off in 2035 is the estimation on this one. So it's within, this was created in 2021. So it'd be 6 years before that 20-year limit. With that, I will stand for any questions. And the applicant is here in the audience if you have any questions.
Karen? Ooh, whoops, I missed you. Can you request again?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. Why was the 300 feet put in there in the first place?
Good morning, Sarah Hansel with the Planning Projects Division. The original project plan included the 300 feet of center line just to really associate those grading costs with the public infrastructure associated with the road instead. Moving beyond that 300 feet really gets more into the developability of the adjacent property.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Vicki?
Vicky?
Mr. Chair, that might be something that you want to have the applicant speak to. We kind of scratched our heads on that one too a little bit. Okay. I did wanted to mention, and Karen, you can attest to it as well, this was fairly well vetted at the TIF committee, and the fact that it did not exceed the previously allocated funding for grading along this street, they did get behind this revision.
Correct. I agree. The TIF committee thought this is, it's not going to change the dollar figures, and that's the main thing, I guess. But I was just curious to know why, if the applicant or somebody would like to just explain that. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Hani Shafi with Dream Design, the applicant for this project. The original grading for Valley Drive, actually, we anticipated including the entire grading in the project plan, and we agreed to do East and Amosa only 300 feet. We did not notice the 300 foot. As a matter of fact, the project was bid just at the same time as the project plan was adopted. That's why the numbers were that close of each other. To really do Valley Drive, it was a challenge to grade the property around it because of drainage issues and also moving dirt from the high ground and putting it in the low areas to dispose of some of the extra dirt. So that included grading the adjacent properties to make it fit that street. That street is costlier than what anybody could even imagine. It's actually the cost associated with the construction of the street are way higher than what we'll ever get out of that property. So it's, I hope you folks could approve this, since it is a request that does not really change the cost associated with the project. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you also for the explanation. In the future, do you see that road being paved, continuing to be paved?
We are currently under construction for a portion of that road to take it to the top of the hill, and that is associated with an apartment, a low-income housing apartment complex that is in partnership between Lloyd Companies and the state of South Dakota. That is also under construction, so we're building the road in front of it. And just to give you an indication or an idea of the cost of that project, we opened bids on the street fronting that lot that they're building the affordable housing on it. The bids, there were two bids. One is $604,000 and one is $900,000. And the lot that we sold to build those affordable apartments, we only got $178,000 from that lot. Across the street from that lot, there is actually no land to develop because it's almost like a vertical wall. So the net result is a loss of about almost $420,000. That's on top of the, this cost of the grading. So it's, but that's a major connection within the city, and we intended to take it up all the way up there.
Okay. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you.
Brooke, did you have something? Or?
So I appreciate the explanation, because I'm like, it feels like it's still within the original TIF, and I do think this is a no-brainer, but probably more just a question for staff. Is it pretty typical that we would have to see it at planning and zoning for a language change like that? Like, is there something that is significant about that makes it come in front of planning and zoning?
Vicki?
So when the applicant's project plan comes in, they identify the parameters for expenditure, and if they go beyond that, then it's something that does trigger that amendment, even if the dollar amount doesn't shift. And so working with them as we're working through it, we find that the TIF committee, Planning Commission, and Council do like to see those specific line items identified. But in a situation such as this, I think Hanny did a really good job explaining why that 300-foot got attached to North Valley Drive, since it was a part of East Anamosa. That might have just literally been a typing error. But at the end of the day, it does exceed the scope for quite a distance of what the previous approval was. So based on policy, we're going to bring that back before you folks for final approval.
Thanks, Vicki. Mike Kwasny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The other reason I would think that it would be brought before us is that it sets a precedence. Is that a possibility that as companies go forward, that precedence could be set? I guess I'm just a little curious, because it expands, and so others could use that money also towards developing land adjacent to it.
So I would venture to say that the precedent has already been set. You see several amendments to approved TIFs where in the execution of actual construction, one element costs more than something else, or there's an unforeseen expenditure out in the field. And so the process is working. We want the project to be successful. This TIF and the development that's occurring is well underway, and being able to work with the developer to ensure that we don't exceed the overall approval and confirmation that the TIF will pay back in the specified amount of time, it still allows them to proceed without having, as Hanny, I think, did a good job explaining some of the expenditures of just North Valley Drive alone. It lends itself to the success of the project as a whole.
And I would agree with that. That land has been sitting there for quite a while, and I think they've done a great job. It looks good, all that area, and to have the road connected, and there's just a lot of pluses that are occurring out there. So appreciate what's been done. So
Vince?
If I could get Sarah to clarify something that was reported in the I guess the TID meeting, because the question that came up, the applicant intends to use most of 35% for allowable increase of increasing contingency costs, and Sarah would provide to the Planning Commission those numbers on how it would impact. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I believe that may be the next item on the agenda for
Okay.
TID number 88.
I'm trying to get ahead of myself. I guess.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to move approval of item number 6.
And I'll second.
Okay.
All right. Karen made the motion to approve the resolution for amendment number 2 to the project plan for TID number 84, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7.
Thank you. So this is another amendment. This is amendment number 1 to the project plan for the County Road West TID number 88. Once again, here is the city limits, which is in yellow. You can see the very small boundary up to the top of the map. This is the location of this district. This is an up-close view of the boundary. And through the middle there, you can kind of see where Country Road comes through. And what this TID originally was approved for, oops, sorry about that, was to extend Country Road west to allow for private development. Country Road, as you can see in the middle of the boundary, the green dashed dots, Country Road is identified in the major street plan as a collector street. The original purpose of this TID was to extend Country Road to provide the infrastructure for the support of 7 two-unit lots, 33 single-family lots, and 72 multifamily units. And this TID is classified as a local TID. So this is an ask to increase the original cost in the project plan by approximately 33%. The reason being is from the 2023 engineer estimates, and when this was just recently bid out a few months ago, the bids came back in approximately 33% higher. This is a unique project in this stage, as there are fixed cost estimates, and with those fixed cost estimates, contingency should be minimal. As you can see, one of the major increases is the financing costs, and that was when the applicant put this together, there would be an increase in the interest rate over the life of the TID, and so they increased the financing costs. But it is important to note that only interest accrued is allowable to be reimbursed by this TID, and financing costs are cannot be reallocated to a different line item within the project's costs. And then the projected amortization schedule. With this amendment, this is projected to pay off in 2031. So this is well within, even with the increase in costs of the 20-year allowable by statute. And I do want to end on one quick note. It was recommended at the TIF committee on July 17th that this TID amendment, and then there was a new application for NN Housing Development that you'll see at Planning Commission on August 22nd for a county assessed fee. So I did reach out to the county last week to see what their thoughts were about, along with the city fee, the $20,000 the city charges for these applications. The county, because there is a lot of work identified that the county puts in a lot of time to administer these districts as well. They're putting together data right now as far as, and it's going to go before their board of commissioners, as far as what they're going to determine what their application fee would be. They don't have that data or that number to me. It was in time for this meeting. It is possible by the next city council meeting, if this was to be approved to move forward, that there would be a fee identified for the county. And with this particular district, and then the one you'll see in the August 22nd Planning Commission, there is room for a fee that, once the county gets back to that could be added to these. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you. Vicki?
if I could get Mike to go back to the slide that showed the finance costs and contingencies. So you see a line item there that says necessary and convenient costs. That $20,000 is what the city recovers for the administration of the TIF for the life of the TIF. And certainly when you look at the hours that the TIF coordinator, now Mr. Mike Dugan, spends on these, it is a reasonable cost. This would put potentially about an additional $10,000 for the county administration. And I think Mike did a good job explaining that they too, for the life of this TIF, there's staff hours spent administering this through the county. The good news is these are all TIF eligible expenses. And so while we recover these administrative fees, the developer can include that in their TIF applications so that it's not a direct out-of-pocket expense for them.
Thanks, Vicki. Vince, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I was just wondering about the, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a question about the impact on the property taxes, and Sarah was going to provide the numbers to the Planning Commission, if you have those available.
Thank you. We don't have an itemized number for this district specifically, but the Department of Equalization's reported that the impact to the taxpayers across the entire school district boundary, it is minimal. You know, it might be like a couple of dollars on your tax bill. It's a small amount, but it's because it's spread across the entire school district.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Other questions or comments on this item? Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When was this TID created, in 2023?
Yes.
Okay, so they'll have to have their development paid for within 5 years.
Correct.
Okay, this seems like a large TIF that's going to be repaid fairly fast, which is interesting. But I'm glad. I mean, that's a good thing. Can you tell me, maybe you don't know this, but why did the state allow a 35% increase in costs? That's a state statute, correct? Do you have any idea?
Sarah?
Thank you for the question. I don't have the exact history. I can make presumptions, but I wasn't involved in those conversations at the time that legislation was brought forward.
Okay. I guess for me, you know, watching TIFs all these years, that's a hefty amount, and I can see future TIFs doing this. You know, why not? You know, and I think when you put together a TIF, it should remain in those boundaries and say, this is what we want to do. I understand this cost can increase, you know, because of inflation and stuff like that, but that's not going to happen all the time. But it allows the TIF applicant to add something that may be out of realm, because it can be, I guess. And so that's just my question. I worry about that in the future. Do you guys have any ideas?
Mr. Chair.
Vicki?
That is a great comment, Karen. I think that this is something the city even experiences, the uncertainty of what that end cost is going to be. We sit in a time right now where, because of material shortages, the increased cost of labor, we sit in an isolated area, so even shipping product to us seems to have a higher dollar amount on the consumer in our area than in other areas. And perhaps that lends itself some to why the state has put that 35% flexibility in there for increase. We ourselves, as we're looking at projects in anticipated cost versus actual cost, find that they're coming in significantly over what we thought they would be.
Okay. Well, every time you put the cost increases, then that really jumps up the interest costs a lot. And, you know, overall, that's just a lot of money that it costs to do these different TIFs. And it's interesting to note that the last two TIFs that we have right now show that they come right to the close to that 35%. You know, that it's not like they increase it 10%. It seems like that they all use the maximum amount. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that's law, and if they can do it, you know, that's part of the deal. So I had another question, but I'll defer for now.
All right. I have a speaker request from Zoe Adams, if that's okay. Mrs. Adams, if you'd like to come up and address the commission.
Good morning. I'm Zoe Adams. My family owns a property abutting the neighborhood, and if I can just go back on this slide, maybe I can show you. We're concerned about water runoff. We've talked to the engineers a year ago. We still haven't heard any plans for the water runoff for any of this development. Our property is getting flooded. It's the one right next to the Irline, that square, and the next one over. Those two properties are my family's, the top right corner over there. All the water already runs off and pretty much floods the properties, and we're waiting to hear the plans on that. And of course, we're worried about property and you know, for her to say a couple dollar increase, that's actually pretty big for as much as our income taxes and property taxes have been going up in the state of South Dakota recently. But for one property to take a couple dollar hit while all these other properties take a couple dollar hit, it just doesn't seem to equal out. But really, we're more worried about the engineering of the whole project.
Thank you. I will say, unfortunately for us, it's tough to discuss the engineering of this because we don't have any engineering done yet.
Well, the city engineers, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The city engineers did come out with their drones and they flew around, but we haven't heard back.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe Todd could provide some info. Sorry, I got to put you on. Whoa, no, I messed it up, Todd. Sorry.
Yeah, I believe Roger, the city engineer, may have met with you out there. I actually haven't heard what the status is because I was not there at that same time. I do know the project was designed by an engineer with the detention ponds constructed or part of the construction to prevent any additional runoff during the 2-year, the 10-year, and the 100-year storm as required.
If I can just interject, that whole field back there used to be ponds and stock dams, and it used to just be full of water even on the driest years. And now with all these housings, all these roads, all these people grading their yards, the water has to go somewhere. And our properties are just turning into floodplains.
Mr. Chair.
Vicki?
I see that we do have Kyle Hibbs, engineer, in the audience, and I believe he is a representative for the property owner for this TIF. And while the drainage concerns that are being cited may not be specific to the TIF request for Country Road itself, perhaps Mr. Hibbs could speak to the how they plan on addressing the drainage concerns associated with this property.
Be wonderful. Kyle?
Thank you, Vicki, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Kyle Hibbs, Indigo Design, LLC, here in Rapid City. Unfortunately, Vicki, I was not the engineer that did the engineered plans for the development for the applicant at the time when he had his engineer selected. So specifics on the site, drainage calculations, I unfortunately cannot speak directly to, I'm sorry. But I can review them, discuss with that engineer, and we can get back with you and probably come to a solution here. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Vicki?
So, not that I meant to facilitate something in the middle of the meeting, but let's facilitate something in the middle of the meeting. So I think it's great that the property owner noted that the city was out with the drone. Mr. Hibbs has offered to look at it as well. Hopefully the city engineer will be back in touch with the property owner. She made some valid comments. I think that it would be only fair if she was provided some information about what is going to be done to address the drainage issues. So potentially between Mr. Hibbs and the city engineer, we can get her some answers.
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Vince, did you have a...
No, I was just going to get back to Karen's observations, if I may, and that is I'm not sure how the codified law was set up to and why 35% was picked, but is there any information available to that number? Because as she pointed out, I mean, it's interesting how it came up to 33% of that cost.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
While we don't analyze why the state creates policies that identifies 35 as the magic number, what we do look at is the cost specific to this project, and coincidentally, it does fall slightly under the 35%. But again, if those aren't actual accrued costs as the project is getting completed, they won't be able to recover that expense. It will only cover what is actually needed to build the project.
Thank you.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember what the other question I had. On the original TIF, they had the amortization schedule using a 9% interest rate, but on the second, on this revised plan, it just says 8%. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is that because they talked to a banker and got it lowered, or that's kind of, usually everybody does the 9% just as a standard, so I was just curious.
Sure. I do not know what the agreement is with their bank currently.
Okay, but that's their recommendation was to do the 8%?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I kind of have a follow-up question. I mean, the bulk of this increase is in financing costs from 493 to 786. I just went and looked. The prime rate plus minus timing is up about 0.5% since then, but a 50-some% increase in financing costs to me sounds like there's a way different rate being priced in currently. And I wonder what kind of assurances the city gets on interest rates versus projected versus actual.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
A great comment, and we labor over these same concerns. The good aspect of how a TIF is certified and the developer then is can have access to that tax increment, those are actual hard receipts and data. So while they're projecting at this stage, that payment will not be provided to them unless they've actually accrued that expense.
Gotcha. Mr. Boomsma, did you want to add anything to that? If you could identify yourself.
Yeah, Dane Boomsma, just representing the project. So when we build these project plans, this is obviously privately funded or privately secured, whether or not that's city financed, which is an option that has been pursued a little bit, which is going to help save on that financing cost and keep the dollars within the city turning and producing more money. But a lot of what we do when we build these project plans is we have to project out what do we feel like we can build and how fast can we build them. This particular project's a little bit unique, which is why we're back here today with the amendment, is because the original consultant that wrote the original project plan was a little bit more aggressive on his development per se or payoff schedule. We're going to take a little bit more conservative approach just because you don't know what the market's going to do. You don't know, you're going to know your interest rate, but you still don't know how fast you're going to produce that increase in tax dollars. And so the increase in financing costs is just a conservative look at it based on the consultant that is being hired today versus yesterday. So we hope that that doesn't happen. This is privately funded, so we're motivated to build the projects to get that increase in tax dollars to pay this off as quick as possible. But this is just a little more conservative approach, which is you're going to see from Indigo versus the previous consultant, at least on this project.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Time versus rate being the reason the financing has gone up or requested to go up. Any other questions or comments on this item?
I make a motion to approve, Mr. Chair, with stipulations.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Brooke made the motion to approve the resolution to adopt amendment number 2 for this tax increment district, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion to approve? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, that takes us to the end of our, I'll call it the regular agenda. Any items to add, Vicki?
Just one, Mr. Chair. We would like to take this opportunity to invite all of the Planning Commission and the public as well to join us next Thursday, 9 a.m. in the community room. We are hosting a Coffee with Planners. We will have coffee, bagels available. We have 3 topic tables. We will be providing an update to the comp plan update, keeping the public informed of where we're at right now. We will be hosting a transportation improvement program table, also known as our TIP, learn about some exciting projects that are coming in our area. And then code enforcement will be hosting a table, reaching out to those so they understand what the nuisance ordinance entails, but more importantly, to work within a neighborhood so that neighbors are helping neighbors and we aren't having to do as many abatements as we are. Kind of going old school, where if you've got someone on the block that is elderly and they can't necessarily mow as often as they need to, what we can do to reach out to organizations and get some young folks out there engaging in some of these. So we've seen that successful in other communities. We're excited about the 3 tables. We hope you can join us and spend a little time at each one of the tables.
9 a.m. All right. Anything from the commission? Motion to adjourn, possibly? All right, Brooke made the motion.
I'll second it.
Vince seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye.
I'm cold, so I'm getting over one, I should say. Starting to get. Well, let me go ask.
I think that's interesting that the interest rates, that they lower the interest rate for the projection. You'd think they'd stay with 9%, doesn't make